pings coming in different boxes. Hi, Chris. You're joining in from Seattle. Great to have you here. Hi, Veena. You're joining from Bangalore in India. Good to have you here too. Um, Great. Okay, a few more introductions coming in. Hi, Yogesh, joining us from Mumbai. Hi, from Bhutan, Philippines. Great. Okay. So we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube as well. So again, a warm welcome to everyone joining us there. Let me just like quickly introduce myself. My name is Ananya, and I will be hosting the session on behalf of Simplilearn. We have a very engaging, informative session planned, so stay tuned. And before we begin, we have a few ground rules that we request everyone to follow. Number one, please drop any questions you have in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. We keep getting a lot of messages in the chat box, so we might end up missing yours. So use the Q&A box effectively. We will try to answer all your queries during the session or at the end of it. Secondly, avoid sharing any external links or personal details on the chat box and keep conversations only relevant to the topic that we're discussing. And finally, if you would like an attendance or a participation certificate, please stay tuned till the end of the session and give us your full name in the poll that we'll be launching at the end of the webinar. And yes, so let's just take a couple of minutes to introduce Simplilearn. Before that, like curious to know any of you here who has attended any Simplilearn webinar before or has enrolled on any of our programs, just drop us in the chat. We'd love to know the audiences better. So yes, at Simplilearn, everything we do revolves around one main idea, and that is to help professionals build skills that actually move them ahead in their careers. So today's session is also very much part of the mission. Over the years, we've worked with millions of learners worldwide across different roles in industries, career stages. We have more than 50 partnerships globally. And speaking of partners, here is the list of our esteemed partners. The programs that we develop and provide are in association with prestigious institutions like Purdue University, Michigan Engineering Professional Education, UCSD, Virginia Tech, as well as leading global organizations such as Google, Microsoft, IBM, and more. But what we're really proud of is how our programs have stood out in impacting careers. Our learners have reported an average of 50% salary hike and have also rated our programs more than 4.8 on 5. So yeah, like quickly, I see that a few responses have come. You've enrolled for the cloud architecture program. Vikas has mentioned that. Surbi is also one of our learners. Great to have you all here. So what we're going to do today, cover in the next 1 hour, is this. We'll dive into the day-to-day responsibilities of cloud architects, which is not a lot, which is a lot more about just technology. It's about solving real business challenges as well. We'll take a look at the current job market landscape for cloud architects this year, and try to understand the opportunities and trends in the industry. Then we'll highlight the top skills that you need to master again this year. These skills would be key to staying ahead in this evolving field. And we'll also provide a comprehensive roadmap to a successful career in cloud architecture. And finally, we'll explore how Simplilearn's Cloud Architect Master's program can be a game changer for your career. And to guide us through all this, we have someone truly accomplished and amazing, Saul Patino. Saul is a multi-cloud architect, a strategist, and a Microsoft certified trainer. He currently works at CBTS as a cloud solutions architect. He holds over 15 years of experience working on Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, and a lot of other platforms. He's an expert in designing hybrid and multi-cloud architectures, and it empowers organizations to align their IT work with their business goals. So I'm sure I'm covering only a small part of your career and your accomplishments. So it'll be great if you can add on to that introduction and say your hi to all our participants here.
Of course, I appreciate that. So yes, my name is Salvatino. I do work as a solutions enterprise architect. Um, we'll dive a little bit deeper into kind of what I've where I started my trajectory. But if you think about what an architect does, right? It kind of takes all these different pieces and creates solutions, right? So my background has been that through when I first started, it was smaller pieces. You could say pre-virtualization. It was hypervisors. It was hardware. It was working with the hardware. So we're talking about the OS. We're talking about these services on the OS. And little by little, I was able to piece those. Now I actually deploy big solutions. They're going to be not just one virtual machine. It could span various virtual machines, front and back end. Just the whole solution as a whole. But it took a little bit of time. And so I'll the point of this webinar is to kind of go through that journey and see how it fits your journey and how you guys can move forward and become cloud architects hopefully in the future.
Great. Thank you, Saul, for that introduction. And like once again, it's a pleasure to have you here and looking forward to a great session. So over to you. Maybe we can start with what like a fun myth versus reality comparison. What is like one stereotype you have faced as a cloud architect? What do people think cloud architects do versus what is it really?
Perfect. So, whenever people see the word cloud, right? Let's not even talk about the word architect right now at this point. When people think of the word cloud, unless you work in IT, um, you have that sense of not understanding what cloud is, right? It's up somewhere, but you don't understand how vast it is. And even to the small, group of people that do understand what cloud is, they start thinking about just virtual machines, right? Compute. You could think of it as just compute, but they don't understand that, as a data center, even data centers that we have now here locally, right? Most of them are going to be networking, storage, compute, right? And some of those components. But cloud in general, it's much more than that. Think about all the PaaS resources, all the SaaS resources that we can actually utilize in the cloud. So when people tell me, "Hey, what do you do?" and I start trying to explain what it is as a cloud architect, it gets very confusing, all right? And it seems like I see in their eyes they think I'm starting to talk about the matrix here, right? Or they just think it's general compute storage and hardware. But it's much more than that. It's much more complex than that. When we talk about myths compared to realities, as I talk about what a solution should work like, they start looking at cloud diagrams, right? Because I do build them. I'm not going to tell you as a cloud architect you're going to have to build them, but it's actually to solve business problems. You can't explain that you need to use PaaS services to save money or SaaS services because it's going to be easier for the current workload you have, unless you actually give them a visible representation. So it's not just drawing cloud diagrams, just to draw them. It's actually to solve these problems, right? It's to be able to explain it to, your CTO, your CIO, or maybe another business alliance or client that you have. Working in isolation, it's not that we tend to work in isolation. On the contrary, you have to learn different aspects of what IT is. And this is something I'll dive a little bit deeper, but you have to work with other teams across the board. You have to work with your security teams. You have to work with your SRE teams. You have to work with your FinOps teams. All those teams you have to work with. Why? Because it actually builds that solution, right? And you'll hear me say that a couple of times. The solution is what a cloud architect really does, okay? And so that solution, it has to be based off of something. We'll talk about it a little bit further, but you have to almost ingrain in your head well-architected framework, right? Well-architected, because that's what the cloud should do. It should architect a well thought out design. So back to what we were talking about, collaborating across teams constantly, that should be something that you should feel comfortable with, but it should also be something that you've been working towards, right? Either if you want to focus on the, let's say, optimization framework, right? And the optimization pillar in AWS or GCP or Azure framework, then you have to start focusing about FinOps, right? So you start diving into that a little bit further. If you want to talk about more about operational stability, then you start working about the thought processes of SRE, right? So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Dealing with technical specifications. Yes, it is important that you deal with that, but you also have to understand how to balance them. Similar to what we were talking about just a minute ago, I always tell my customers that you can have it fast, you can have it well done, or you can have it cheap, but you can't have them all together, and you won't. You're going to have to be able to balance that out. Some customers might need it to be quickly deployed. Well, chances are that's probably going to cost a little bit more money. Why? Because we're using resources that are going to be they tend to be easier to deploy, and it takes more configuration, but it also costs more money. Or, if you're thinking about, let's say, decoupling services, right? Well, you could probably save money instead of using a PaaS service that is a conglomerate of different services, or even a SaaS service. So we'll talk about a little bit about those aspects, but those are those decisions that you have to make that actually start talking about the technical specifications, right? You need to understand why you're dealing with those technical specifications and why you're recommending or choosing those components. And then you have to have the hands-on component as well. I alluded to earlier where I started my career. It was actually pulling out those really heavy racks, the racket stack in the data centers. When I did that, now that I think back and I'm like, man, that was a lot of work, but it actually made me understand how a data center is actually composed, right? What parts are incorporated in a data center? And then it's easier for me to scale out now, right? And think, oh, okay, but if what I worked on, it had this, well, now I understand why X, Y, and Z, right? So there are those myths, right? They have some truth to it, but it's a lot more expanded. It's a lot more complex. Okay. Next slide, please. So again, who is a cloud architect? In a general term, right? It's someone that designs, builds, and oversees cloud computing strategies. Okay, not just cloud computing strategies to power modern businesses. Right? They translate requirements and make it scalable, secure, cost-effective. Which all those are key words in a well-architected. And I would almost do that, right? If you're going to hold me to one sentence, I would be like, you translate business requirements into a well-architected solution, right? Think of them as master planners, someone that can ensure that your organization will grow and not have a roadblock when it comes to support. So innovation, resiliency, cost, security, right? You want to make sure that your organization is always in the middle, right? It has all those items optimized. Okay. Next slide, please. Now, when we think about that, right, as a core responsibility of an architect, and there could be various architects in your organization, right? We'll use the general term cloud architect, but there could be a cloud application architect. There could be a security architect, right? But as a cloud architect, your four primary responsibilities, I feel, are going to be these mentioned here. Design and planning, right? Normally, if and let's allude to an application, and we're going to create a brand new MVP product, right? You'll have your application team, you'll have your DevOps team, you'll have your security team to come and chime in. But the architect is what helps design those, because I can't expect my security liaison to understand storage and requirements for storage for the application, right? And I can expect my application team to understand that, but then they're not going to understand what zero trust is and how we have to implement it. And then neither will my security or my application team understand the cost to it, right? Because they're going to want to throw all the latest and greatest software, but there's that cost that you have to also negotiate, right? That's with your accounting team or your manager, the stakeholders, whoever it is. So that designing and planning, an architect needs to be able to sit down and align with those team members, and then actually design and plan a solution that will align with business goals. And if you always have to think about who do you have to align with, it's your business goals, right? The security team might have their agenda in place, and we might have the application team that wants to install all the latest and greatest, right? Those GPU intensive VMs. But at the end of the day, your business goals is like your team requirements, right? And so that's what you want to be able to do. And as the person that should understand most of these components, that's who you need to be in charge, right? That's who needs to be planning this. Security and compliance. Now, you'll sometimes feel, especially once you start, working with your security teams will have these key concepts, right? That they understand will need to drive any of their security, decisions, right? But those are normally practices that they have as a security officer throughout cloud. We actually, on the other hand, deal with security and compliance that has to do specifically with the provider that we're working with, right? So we might have security and compliance resources that we have to work with in Azure, right? We might have to actually use, some of the Defender for Cloud products that our security team doesn't understand. Why? Because they just understand core concepts. Now they'll be able to use maybe some of the agents, or maybe be able to use Defender for Cloud, the portal. But for the most part, they're not going to understand the fine details, how to configure that. And so you'll come in and actually be able to instill those best practices. Same thing for industry practices that kind of are in that gray area, right? So it's very important that you understand that as a cloud architect, they'll lean on you for those security and compliance pretty much decisions, right? So you want to have a very good understanding of that. Cost optimization. Again, I mentioned it before. No one will understand that cost concept unless you're in cloud. And the cloud architect understands all those core components. Our database team, our DB team, they might understand the cost when it comes to some of the databases, RDS solutions in AWS and whatnot. But for a cloud architect to be able to present a full design and implementation, they need to know where all the costs are going, and then decide, hey, do I need to have global scalability here, or is this an application that I only need to run regionally, right? So can I optimize costs there, or do I need to be able to run these at a very high ops requirement, or can I lower that, right, and use a disk that I don't need to, that I'm not going to leverage, right? So those components, no one else will understand that unless you're in the cloud all the time, right? Which is what we're doing. And then stakeholder collaboration. We need to be able to bridge that technical and business, the teams. What I do a lot is I'll be in the middle. Because of my technical background, I'll be able to bridge our technical teams and make them align to that. But then with our pre-sales team, I need to let them understand how we can achieve that goal. And that's something that you'll find yourself into a lot as a cloud person, is that bridge, right? You'll have that special gift of being able to collaborate with the technical teams and the pre-sales teams and get them aligned. Because the last thing we want is our pre-sales team to sell something that is not feasible or not possible with the cloud, how we currently have it. Or same thing, the technical team not understanding what the pre-sales team just sold, right? So you have to bridge them. And unfortunately, those are two unique skill sets that will only be able to be bridged if it's someone that understands both sides. Next slide, please. Now, why does this matter, right? We're in a unique situation where this conversation wouldn't feel right if I didn't say AI at least once, right? So we're in a unique situation where with AI right now, we're starting to use resources, and we can call them core resources that were not being focused on before, right? If you think about where we were at before, we were trying to go more paths, right, trying to reduce some of the hardware because that's where the cost is at. Well, now with AI, we still have to start thinking about data, right? We have to start thinking about data. We have to start thinking about the security behind the data, right? So some of those components that we didn't realize that we depended on, and sometimes because of the cost model, right? We said, hey, we don't need this. Well, we need to focus on that more. So enterprise adoption is very important now on topics that we might have talked in the past, and we kind of just left on the side. the enterprise adoption for cloud services right now in their operations is hitting about 94%. And we talk about the market share, right? $900 billion. And it's because of AI, right? Think of all the resources AI are actually now consuming, all these GPU intensive VMs in the cloud. Think about all the data, right? Because data is our biggest commodity, and without data, we can't do what we're doing right now with AI, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's parsing, right? And then where are those things sitting on? LLMs are sitting on compute, memories being guzzled down. So all these core components are very big, and that's why we're getting such a premium market size. Now, because of the expense to this, cloud architects, that's one of the roles that you'll still see are being leveraged a lot because they need, if you think about it, what a full stack developer was, probably 5, 6 years ago, the reason they were so hot in the market is because they knew the full stack of applications. Well, whenever you can deploy an application so quickly now, right, with just using agentic AI to be able to just create that quick framework, well, then you have to worry about where am I going to save that cost? That cost is going to be in your infrastructure, right? And so that's why these architects are being able to come in and build that AI infrastructure where the rest of the pieces can land on. That's why cloud architects are very important right now. And then the job growth, right? We expect it to grow. It's always grown because someone that has that full stack knowledge of cloud was always very important. But it's even more important now because as companies are spending more and more money in their environment, they need to optimize. They need to make sure it's resilient. They need to make sure that it's all those key fundamental parts that we've talked about well architected, right? So all these metrics are alluding to how important a cloud architect is going to be now and here in the coming years. Next slide, please.
Yes. Saul, before we go to the next section, I just want to address a few of you who raised your hands. I think you have questions. So please use the Q&A box and drop us the questions that you have. We'd be happy to address them at the end of the session. Yes, Saul, over to you.
Okay, I appreciate that. So a real day in my cloud architect workday. Now, I'll be honest with you. Some of these I might have added them. It was a span of 2, 3 days, right? But I wanted you to get a sense of what an 8 to 5 or 4 would be, right? Because the one thing I can tell you right now, if you can describe one word, is going to be not normal, right? As a cloud architect, we've been talking about how we can allude to how much work it seems in the back end. But it's not so much work, it's just the skill set that you know. And it's not that you're always doing the work. It could be that you're recommending, right? It could be that you're using your expertise to be able to guide people, right? And you'll see that it can be a lot of stuff, but always recognize that you're a valued asset in your company because of what you know. And so sometimes it could be that you just get pulled into stuff. And so, yes, this next couple of slides, you're going to be like, man, he's going all over the place. Well, it's because of the knowledge, right? Next slide, please. So usually what you try to do, right? And I know most people, I remember when I started my career, it was like, hey, please give me an hour. I'm going to check my email. I'm going to check my messages. I'm going to check this and that. Well, now, because of how important your work is, you have to check the stuff that's a little bit more important, right? And in this case, there was an incident not too long ago where the first thing I was looking at were logs, right? We had some alerts over the night, and I could have looked at my email, but usually what I say is, hey, if someone needs to get a hold of me, it's an emergency, they can reach out to me, right? They can reach out to me other ways. So usually what I try to focus on is alerts that I see. Most of the time you recognize those alerts because you understand all the alerting mechanisms, right? And so in the morning, whenever I woke up, I did have some alerts on some performance metrics. Now, my background before was in Hyper-V and VMware, right? And so back in the day, there used to be I think it's called Area now, but it's called VROPS, where I was, always looking at these metrics on these heat maps. And I know how much IOPS can affect it, right? So I always tend to have these triggers on IOPS when it comes to queue death on disks and things related to this, because whenever we see these overviews on the cloud portals, we tend to just it's an overview, right? And for the most part, it's going to show us CPU, it's going to show us memory, and it's going to show us some of those graphics, right? Um, IOPS is very important because the way we use now, and if you think about it, you don't stripe disks like you used to before. In our previous environments, we would stripe disks, right? What we would call RAIDs. Well, now that's one of that's one of the responsibilities that falls on cloud providers now. So a lot of that stuff is invisible to us. So I like to set these alerts on when it comes to IOPS. I like to set them on QDeath just to get an idea of the health of applications. So early in the morning, I start to get these alerts. And then, while I was looking at these alerts, you always have these DevOps teams that you're always going to meet up, right? They could be your infrastructure. I work in also helping out our internal IT, right? Because we do provide IT for customers, but we also provide IT internally. So, right from these alerts that I'm trying to figure out, and I'm seeing these alerts, then I start addressing some of the updates and address deployment blockers for some of the applications that we're working with our customers. Then at 9 o'clock, it's the architecture team, because I do work with a team that has similar skill sets, right? Think of it as more eyes, right, will help the problem. And so I get with these teams and we start talking about new services. Microservice is a very important keyword that you should always remember. If you think about the responsibility model, right, the highest model is usually going to be the most expensive, right? So if you're thinking about SaaS platform, why is it SaaS? Well, the cloud provider is assuming support, resiliency, operational, all the key components, and the only thing that you're actually adding is your configuration, right? They even hold your data. A SaaS platform like email, they even hold your emails for you, right? All you're doing is configuring it and you're reading it. Well, that's also kind of expensive. Now, the more responsibility you take on yourself, the cheaper it's going to be, right? So if we would go, turn back time and we actually hosted the own server, we don't have to pay someone to support that. If we hosted the own hardware, we wouldn't have to pay support that, right? So think of it in that sense. And that's one of the key functions of how to save money. Well, microservices is that, right? Now we can use microservices as function apps. We can use microservices as Kubernetes compared to what an IaaS server is, right? So always think of ways that you can minimize those or create services into microservices because it saves you money, right? And so for this particular call, that's what we were doing. We were going into our environment and we're seeing our environment and seeing where we could save money. Where can we go from IaaS to possibly Kubernetes? Where can we go from the IaaS servers, or if we're using Nginx servers, and actually use them on container apps, for example, right? So it's always good to always think about those and seeing where you can optimize, right? Think of that well architected, what I mentioned earlier. Where can you always improve? And then towards later on that morning, and remember that fire drill was or the logs were still in. I was working them in the background, but later on that morning, it was designing disaster recovery, right? One of those key pillars, reliability. And the reason I was, in that part is because, again, I want to make sure that it's a solution that will meet business requirements for a customer, that will also be able to hold our compliance and security standards that we use as best practices. And the key stakeholders in that call, I wanted to make sure that they were all aligned, right? So, I worked with our team on that part as well. Next slide, please. So later on that morning, right, whenever I had the application team come back to me, I let them know, hey, these are alerts I'm seeing. I feel, right, that we might be having problems on the database because the latency, and I see these ops. So again, sometimes it's actually hands on, and our DB team might have not understood that the storage that we're using was going to have this latency, because guess what? They don't really work with managed disks, right? They might not work with resource A, B, and C. And so that's why you're kind of always involved in this hands-on troubleshooting. In this case, that's exactly what it was. We had deployed a new application, and because of cost, right, the database that we were using was not, or I'm sorry, the disk that we were using was not was susceptible to the IOPS that were being written because it was, I believe it was writing really small files, and that speeds up IOPS, right? So again, I was able to give the right information, right recommendations to our team, and then we would kind of pinpoint those connection bottlenecks. We would pinpoint, in the logs, what you see is just redlining on top of the IOPS requirements, and then you compare that to the resources, and then you see, hey, I see a correlation, right? That's also very important. Always see those correlations. Remove as many variables because cloud is full of resources. Remove those variables, and then try to see where you could see those correlations. And in our case, luckily, we were able to realize a correlation between the databases and the data or the storage that we're using. That was the morning, right? So as you can see, just the morning, just what you're doing in the morning, you're going from helping teams, right, making recommendations, using the knowledge that to further along line any proactive work that you're doing, and at the same time you're working with reactive situations, right? So you have to be able to understand where all these different pain points are coming from, and try to understand that, hey, they're coming to you because you understand the whole solution and not just one or two items. And then towards 12:15, 12:30 after lunch, you could say, it's usually going to be more of just reactive work that maybe is in the back burner. Maybe there's teams that come to you and say, hey, Saul, we're having a problem with this, or hey, what do you recommend for that? You want to align on different approaches. And then towards the end of the day, it's really more proactive work, right? Stuff that you have time to do. That's not, burning a bridge somewhere. I like to, in my organization, I like to sit down with our support teams and help them do runbooks, right? With AI, we can actually make that a little bit quicker now, right? And you can use Copilot and where they're looking for these things. But it's always good to have documentation, right? As we know, AI will help us become better engineers and architects, but if we leave that to them, they're not going to understand if they hit a wall, right? And so we have to understand that we have to keep documentation still. We have to make sure we have runbooks, because at the end of the day, we should always have a man in the middle to look at that. Even if it's something that AI did, we have to have the responsibility to go in there and say, hey, this was the correct action, right? So I still align with our support team, and we create runbooks. We carry documentation of everything that we have going, and then for future references as well, right? Next slide, please. And then towards the afternoon, it's with key stakeholders, right? I this last year, so the what architected, like I said, is different pillars. Last year was my focus on FinOps, right? So I put myself in a position that I become a better FinOps architect, right? I will always find myself as being a cloud architect, but I wanted to focus my discipline all last year in FinOps, and so that's kind of what I did. And so now I'm able to actually talk to more of our team on the finance side, right? I'm able to provide key information. FinOps Foundation uses what they call focus templates, where you can provide key information for this, and it spreads through clouds, which is perfect because I have to work in different clouds, right? And so I'm more involved in that. I also, try to help update system diagrams and architecture designs, because at the end of the day, I'm the one that has, me and my team have the big picture of what all these solutions should look like. And the best way that you can help a team is to be able to create this, because yes, there's some very gifted people that can look at an Excel sheet and look at ports and protocols and IPs and say, oh, I understand how this works perfectly. But for the other 90% of normal engineers like myself, a visual representation is better. And so I like to create these Visios where they're very clear. I try to keep them up to date because obviously all this changes. And so usually I try to take my afternoons to do that. And then towards the end of the day, I collaborate with our other internal teams. They'll ping me. Usually I try to put those last, I guess you could say, throughout the day I get reached, I get, pulled on the shoulder. And so usually I tell them, hey, schedule some time towards the end of the day where I'm a little bit more free. And I love to talk to our fellow, security teams and our DB teams and our managed services teams, because I feel that I can always provide some type of either knowledge or support, right? So most of those calls will be towards the afternoon when I'm done. And then at the end of the day, so I'm really big a proponent of learning, right? You know, it was stated earlier, I'm a certified trainer, right? So I like to train actually internal people in our company, but I also try to help the junior admins and junior engineers of where to go next, because at the end of the day, these are the team members that are going to be my team members, right? And they might be at that point. And if they have a better skill set, well, guess what? It's going to help me out as well. And plus, it's always great to be able to help colleagues, because I think I'm where I'm at now because I was on really, really good teams, right? It's a whole lot easier to understand a scenario whenever you have people around you to be able to explain that. And I try to do that now in my career because I feel that I'm in that position now. But then I also want the people that work around me to sooner than later also be in that position. So I think it's really, really important to keep that training, to keep that, your preparation. Cloud is one of those things that are constantly ever changing, right? Every week it could be a new, especially now it could be a new technology, a new feature set, and so you want to be able to keep on top of that. So I try to spend the last time that I have at work to help encourage these new admins. Next slide, please. So we'll kind of shift a little bit now. The reason I want to talk about is never just technical. We have to understand, and we talked about earlier, it's not just, hey, let me know how to deploy this. Do I understand what a VM is? Do I understand what a EC2 instance is? It's not just that. You have to understand designing and planning. You have to understand, and again, this alludes back to well-architected frameworks, but you have to understand how to design and how to plan. Those mid-level certification exams, if you think about how the certification works, right? The first fundamental one, right, or the entry level certification, is to understand core concepts. The second one is to understand how to deploy, right? How to deploy these. And for the most part, I feel that someone that is in their cloud journey, right, if they feel that they've had, they've worked at it for, a couple of, either months or a couple of years, then most of them will fall under that band, right? The last one, and the expert one, is really the one that you can define yourself as an architect, because those are the ones that actually help you design the solutions, right? I can go deploy an FTP solution very easy, right? I just have some backend storage, an EC2 instance or a VM in Azure, right? And then, and I know Azure now has that FTP service, but just pretend they didn't. I can deploy it. But there's key concepts in that you have to understand, right? What do I need to put in place security wise? Well, I'll need to have some type of security groups or NSGs. What do I need to save cost? Well, I might be able to use a storage account instead of a disk, or vice versa, right? I might be able to do a smaller instance, right? Settings, you might have to put some settings in place. So all these design principles and the planning principles are in that architectural role. And that's not something that you find as an architect or as an engineer. And so that's how I like to define an architect. And I think that exams clearly define that, right? The professional certification for AWS, just like the expert architect for Azure, define that. That last one is, can you properly architect and design and plan a solution, compared to, can you just deploy something, right? So always understand that it's not just technical. It's always going to be those items that complete you, right? Next slide, please. Now, the ideal career path as a cloud architect. In my case, like I stated before, I learned some of those key concepts that formed what cloud was. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little bit older, and I know now you won't be working on possibly hypervisors, or you won't be working with VMware. And there's also other solutions for virtualization now, right? But think about what that did. The virtualization layer allowed me to understand what cloud does for you. It provides that virtualization layer. But it also allowed me to understand the responsibility model, which both of those are key concepts of what cloud is, right? It let me understand that responsibility model because I had to install that rack, right? I had to go back there and plug those wires. I understood what was necessary for me to offload once I became once I migrated those VMs into Azure. I never have to install wires anymore. That's the responsibility that a cloud provider will give you, right? But I didn't have those key concepts before. So when we talk about cloud and all those components, try to start there, right? Try to understand what virtualization is. If you like storage, understand those key concepts of storage. How do you produce more IOPS? How do you help a disk that has to have more resiliency, right? There still are SANs and even NASs, right? You might have one. Well, understand those core concepts. It's very important. If you're into DevOps, right? DevOps, Azure DevOps, and then there's CloudFormation and all those key concepts. Well, they start using the core concepts that you learned on your computer, right? Scripts, codes. Learn how to use those. Use AI and use agentic AI to help you create maybe that baseline of how to create that, and then grow on that, because all those are pillars in a well-architected framework, right? If you consider, FinOps, for example, well, that's just proper etiquette in Azure. You're not going to go deploy a GPU-intensive VM if you don't need it, right? So those core concepts you can bring just from what you learn studying your classes, and you can become a better architect because you understand cloud optimization. Security, you might have to go and actually take some security courses to get a little bit better understanding what core concepts of it are, and that'll make you a better architect, even though it's security, right? Understand what zero trust is, right? And those parts are what you want to learn to be able to become a better architect. Reliability, right? That's SRE. You have to understand what a properly well disaster recovery strategy is, right? Well, to understand that, you need to go back and say, okay, how can I learn that? Well, if I have one VM, let me see what happens if I have two VMs. Let me shut one down, right? All those core concepts will later on in life make you a better architect. And most importantly, have a mindset of understanding what well-architected frameworks are. GCP will give you their definition. AWS actually has 6 pillars, not 5. And then you have Azure, right? And the Azure well-architected framework is going to be probably the most important one, because I feel, right, that it defines all the items, right, how you need to be able to get to them. Next slide, please. Now, again, they're just very similar to what we were talking about before. As a cloud administrator, right? And actually before that, the key concept that I learned, it was about 1 or 2 years, right? If you go in there and you learn for 6 months some core concepts, 6 months is not enough, right? Because you need to understand how to deploy it, but then you need to understand why you did those decisions, right? Why did I deploy a VM with SSDs instead of just regular spindle drives, right? Understand the core concepts. And I feel that, 3 to 6 months, you're just understanding how to deploy, right? What are those switches? What are those configurations? So to feel that, to be able to properly say, hey, you know how to do this, I feel that a good cloud administrator has to really do their work probably between 1 and 2 years. The cloud engineer is actually the one that manages his resources, right? And those are the ones that actually are going to be more aware of how each of those pillars affect each other, right? How does security affect maybe cost? How does operational excellence affect those? And then after those, 3 to 4 years, that's when you're a cloud architect, right? You can actually start expanding solutions. It's no longer just deploying a solution. It's no longer just using your requirements and deploying just to meet minimum requirements. It's actually being able to design those scalable and resilient systems. And then the last part is, that principal architect. It's not just defining it. It's actually um, it's not just defining it, it's actually leading the charge, working with your CIO, building cloud strategies. And when I talk about cloud strategies, it's not just for one solution, it's for your entire tenant, it's for your entire environment. It's being able to take all those core components and create them into an actual cloud environment, cloud tenant that you can lead your company, that you could actually sell those services through your company to maybe clients. Or whatever if you're a consultant, right? That principal architect needs to understand all those strategies all into one and then be able to apply it to actual environments, right? And to be able to do that, I think it takes at least 6-7 years because of that, because it's a lot of information that you have to ingest. It's all that time that you spent with colleagues in different teams, right? It's all the different possible, you could say resources that you work with. How do they align with the technical solutions and business requirements, right? So it takes a lot of study. And then, I don't want to compare it to what like a doctor is, but think of why a doctor takes so long, right? It's spending their time to master their craft. And that's what you're trying to do here. A cloud architect is great, and they understand a lot of knowledge, and they should. But a lead or a principal architect has mastered their craft. They can take a solution and make it even better than that, right? So I feel that timeline, if you start thinking about that, it stretches and it becomes something that, yes, it's a lot of time, but you learn so much within that process. Next slide, please. So essential skills, right? This is something that I like to do because I like to tinker. I feel that as a cloud architect, you always have to be on top of things, right? And it's great to take learns and everything, but you need to be a little hands-on, right? So first of all, if you're going to be a cloud architect, I feel that you need to understand, at least the primary clouds. And I listed AWS, Azure, and GCP here because that's what I do. But there's OCI, right? There's other different types of cloud that you could do. I feel that those have a very good market share, right? And so those are usually the ones that I talk about. But have an understanding, right? I won't dive too deep into differences, but I will tell you that there's differences, right? If you're working in data, GCP might be a better solution, right? If you're working with microservices and being able to decouple those services, AWS might be better for you. Or if you're already in that Microsoft ecosystem, well, then Azure might be best for you. Understand the weaknesses and the benefits of each one. Infrastructure as code, right? Now it's because of how scalable cloud is, you need to understand infrastructure as code, at least be able to recognize it. Now, with AI, we can actually utilize it even better now, right? But at the end of the day, infrastructure as code will always be very important for different things. For reliability, right? Whenever you're talking about apps and you want to quickly deploy them or create new environments, you need infrastructure as code. When you want to keep them as the same configuration, right? You need to make sure that everything's automated, consistency, reliability. Infrastructure is perfect for that, and it's going to be an essential tool now and moving forward, right? So this is one of those key concepts that even if you're not very comfortable with, I'm not. I still try to at least learn small snippets, right? And I felt that doing that little by little, I feel very comfortable at it now when before I did. Container orchestration, right? And containers in general. Like I said earlier, sometimes one of the biggest cost reductions is going from a bigger service to a microservice, right? And when you could use ECS or AKS, or just even Kubernetes, right? Just letting it all orchestrate together, or even just containers, right? Understand that application model or the infrastructure model and the deployment, because it could save a lot of money and time. Plus, it's also resilient. Plus, there's other things that really fit well with the well-architected framework. But containers are always going to be that one thing that is that next step of evolution, right? If you think about the way we went from hardware to virtual machines, and then virtual machines to removing that OS from the virtual machine and make it smaller, right? In containers. And then as we get lower and lower, you'll understand that, hey, sometimes you don't even need containers, you need functions, right? So think of how that drives down costs. Think of how that makes your environment more prone to reliability. And for sure, understand how containers work. It's very important. Security compliance, we don't need to dive too much into that, but understand how that affects your architecture design. Zero trust is very important right now because essentially you can't trust anything. It's so easily permissible to just allow MFA, to click MFA on, and guess what? You probably allowed someone in the back end, without you knowing it. It's very easy to be able to bypass older security functions that we had in place. And so zero trust, what it does is it gives you a gate through every layer, right? Starting from the physical layer, right? They need to have a key to get into the data center. Well, once they're there, they need to have another key to get into the cage. Well, once they're in the cage, they need another key to be able to open the rack. Think of that concept when it comes to cloud, because at the end of the day, cloud is very we don't see it unless we're logged into a portal. It's abstract. It's just there. It's all virtualization, right? Observability, that kind of falls back into that, right? Unless you're sitting there looking at the portal day in and day out every day, you can't do that. So you need to have observability. You need to have logs in place, right? Leverage the native log solutions that the cloud solutions are providing, or use these optimized solutions like Datadog, Prometheus. They have visualizations through Grafana. Make sure that you have visibility. The most important thing is know where you can see things visibly. I was talking about the logs, right? I do that because I feel comfortable because I can see that. And if you don't have that and you don't feel comfortable, then you need to have yourself in a situation. And the observability is key component in cloud. And then the CI/CD pipelines, right? Back to infrastructure as code and the orchestration and the cloud and all those components. It's so much easier when you can rapidly deploy those and then break them down, right? Or if I need to set up a test environment very quickly, long gone are the days that you're manually deploying these. If you properly can have this hygiene of infrastructure as code and tie together the pipelines, then it's going to make you a better engineer and architect. And those tools, are going to carry you long and far. Okay. Next slide, please. And so, the final slide, from I guess you could say this portion of the slides, why is it important? Well, cloud architects, because of all the knowledge they have to understand, the skills that you need, it's very important to understand how you get compensated. And these are going to be numbers that we can pull from everywhere, and everywhere it's gonna change. But as you can see, even as a single cloud architect, it's a pretty good paid job. And as you go into multi-cloud and principal architects, it grows exponentially, right? And so the important key concept here is to always understand that even though you're an architect, you can grow, right? You can grow, you can absorb more information, you can learn different key pillars from the well architected framework that can always guide you and make you a better cloud architect. Okay. Okay, next slide. And I will
Great.
hand it over
Thank
to
you,
you.
Sol. I think that was super extensive. So thank you so much for covering all of this in detail. Before we move on to the next session, it will be great. We have a lot of attendees here, a lot of participants, and we want to keep curating content and keep curating such sessions for you that is more aligned with your interests, and aligned with what you want to learn about. So I'm going to launch a poll to give you a chance to let us know what type of session you would find most valuable in our upcoming webinars. Would you like more career guidance? Would you like more demos or case studies or learning pathways? And we'd be sure to plan our next webinars in this category accordingly. So while the poll is live, I think like we can quickly, briefly talk to you about the Cloud Architect Masters program. So let me just like quickly delve into the key features. It's a 4-month program that's live, online, interactive. Upon completion, you get a Cloud Architect accreditation from Microsoft Azure and AWS. You'll also receive a badge and a certificate through the MS Learn portal. Next, the program is specifically designed to enhance your career. So it covers over 17 in-demand skills and 25 tools. And these aren't just like random skills. These are skills that we spoke about, just a little while ago, and skills that are based on industry demands this year and what employers are seeking. And additionally, you will receive an MS Azure exam voucher, which can be used for any Azure course, but this is available for select countries only. So your expert advisor can let you know further details. And you will also get access to official AWS authored self-learning content. This means that you're going to get very high quality, most up-to-date information straight from the source. And these, like, whatever I spoke about are in addition to what you will learn from the program, which you can see here. I'm not going to go into all of this in detail, but let me just like briefly cover that the program has 5 main modules, including a capstone project, and 5 super interesting electives for you to choose from. So we have a lot of answers coming in. A lot of you would like, career guidance. Most of you are also asking for case studies in real world applications. Wonderful. So we'd be sure to plan our future sessions according to your interests. So I'm going to end the poll and yes, continue with the program details. Yes, speaking of projects, so here is the list of few of the industry projects that this program covers, from VPC creation and configuration to deploying applications in various industries on cloud. These projects are for you to get a learning experience that's more hands-on and like more fun and engaging, but it's also for you to have a solid credible work to showcase on your portfolio and present it to potential employers with confidence. And like we mentioned, the program covers a huge list of highly sought after skills, and gives you exposure to a lot of latest trending tools. So if you're wondering what after the program, then let me just like brief you on Simplilearn's job assist support. You'll receive personalized guidance for interviews, so that like it boosts your confidence and your performance during the interview as well. You can also leverage AI tools to enhance your resume and LinkedIn profile. So these optimizations are for you to ensure that you get maximum recruiter visibility, and also for you to stand out in the competitive job market. We also present a curated pick of job opportunities that align with your skills and career aspirations. And finally, you can sharpen your core technical skills with with specific assessments that we have designed, and this is to enhance your proficiency. So, for interested learners, here are the program investment details. For Indian learners, the fee is 57,599 rupees with monthly installments starting from just 4,799. For learners from the USA, the program fee is $1,449 with installments from $128 a month. For our learners from other parts of the world, sorry, we're not able to present the exact program fee in your currency, but you can check it out in the link that I am going to be sharing on the chat. Yes, so you can also access more details about the program if you scan the QR code. And for all of you who are watching us on LinkedIn and YouTube as well, you can scan this QR code and get to know more about the program in detail. So with that, I'm going to launch another poll to take your interest in enrolling in the program. You can just simply click on a yes or a no. If you have any queries, need more understanding, or you're a little unsure, you can still click on yes, because our expert advisor can get in touch with you, and give you personalized guidance through it all. And while the answers come in, Saul, maybe we could take a couple of questions that we've gotten from our audiences. Um, right. So someone wants to know what would be what approach would you suggest for a person to crack the solution architect exam in one go? Do you have any tips for them?
Um, which exam is it again?
Solution architect, I'm assuming it's the AWS certification.
Yeah. So first of all, if we consider, hey, what do you have available, right? Um, YouTube, that's going to be the first thing I would always go to if you're just starting off just starting off, especially if you're going to go in there and say, hey, you know what, I have a little bit of experience, I need to refresh. Um, you want to do labs, right? If you think about what those solutions are, go do labs. I know if you look in GitHub, right, and you can see AWS labs, it'll tell you and it'll actually give you an exam for them. So you can get a good idea and just keep on doing those, because what those exams do, especially when you're looking at the expert or the third tier one, right, the professional, um, again, they're going to want you to know what the best solution is for that deployment, right? So they'll give you an example, and then they're going to tell you, you'll hear keywords or you'll read keywords. What is the best solution? What's the most affordable, or what's the best resilient, right? Whatever wording they're using. Well, they're basing it off of that well architected framework, right? They're telling you what's going to be the cheapest solution, what's going to be the most resilient. And so when you know it's most resilient, then you're going to look at those answers and you're going to be like, okay, I don't need local storage. I need, geo redundant storage, or I need, global. If you need a solution that has GRS, well, you need to use those resources. So YouTube, look at it. Obviously, if you're enrolled in any kind of program, that'd be great as well. But it's you have to be ready for that test. All the professional ones, I wouldn't say, hey, let me just sign up for it and go take it. You want to feel confident in it. And then there's practice tests that you can do. I know there's services that charge you for those practice tests, but you'd be amazed at how many there are. And then always use a cloud provider, right? I mean, they're the actual de facto knowledge holders for that. So you want to go in there and do that, right? Just feel confident. If you're taking that test, right? If you're taking the solution architect test, the confidence is probably going to give you a couple of points just right off the bat, right? So feel confident to do that. Go in there. The YouTube, the reason I suggest it is because once you feel right and you're like, hey, I understand this and I understand this, then that confidence, it helps you, right? And be relaxed, man. You got it. Just feel confident and go in there and take it, and I think you'll do well.
Great, awesome. Thank you, Saul. So with that, I'm gonna end the poll for enrollment. We've gotten quite a lot of interest towards that, and maybe one last question that we can take, Saul. I'll get to that, but yes, we know that many of you might be to know about the attendance certificate. So I'm gonna launch another poll now where you can enter your full name. We will be able to generate a certificate and share with you on email within the next 48 working hours. So yes, Saul, the last question for the session is from someone who wants to know more about entry-level cloud roles that requires less coding. Is that
Of
feasible?
course.
How does it work?
Yeah. So first of all the vendors, right? For those fundamental classes, they'll give you, or it'll be reduced price, but they have free courses. Okay, so it'll be like a 1 day. Hey, this is what you need to do. Because remember, at the end of the day, for that entry level, all you need to really understand is the terms, key terms, and then you can go in there and actually learn it. Now, what roles can you deal with that? Well, any role that has to do with cloud can get you in the door. So any support roles, right? If you think about it, any role that has to do with even connecting, different passers, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're working with, let's say, a cloud vendor, right, or a company that just has cloud products, well, you might only see them. I'm going to give you an example here, but let's say Salesforce, for example. Well, Salesforce is an application that we see off of our website. Well, they host their environment in the backend on the cloud, right? So don't be scared to go in there and be like, well, it's a platform, it's an application. I don't know about applications. I don't know coding. Well, they need support, right? And their infrastructure is going to be based off of actual components, right? If they're going to run a VMware somewhere, they're going to run a container sit somewhere. None of that, none of support is going to take coding. In fact, coding is for deployment. Coding helps also, that pipeline will also help with resiliency, right? If you need to hurry up and bring it up in another environment. But for support, it's just understanding those core concepts. And if it's entry level, understanding what a VM is, understanding what storage is, how they work together, how to troubleshoot that, because you already understand what those core concepts is. I think that's the most important thing. And once you get that foot in the door, go get that expert. I mean, go get that entry level cert and build off of that, right? If you feel that and you start liking security a little bit further, well, then use cloud and then start diving into security. If you like, operations, we'll start diving into SRE, right? But have that foundational cloud, regardless of the cloud provider that you go into, have that foundational knowledge and then grow from there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sol. So with that, I'm gonna come to the end of the session. If you have any questions that we were not able to address in the webinar, you want to share any feedback, please just write to us at webinars@simplilearn.net. Sol, thank you so much for your guidance and sharing your knowledge with us the last 1 hour. It's been a pleasure hosting you. Do you have any final remarks to share, any advice for our learners?
Keep on learning. I say that everywhere I say it in my LinkedIn. I say it whenever I talk to new learners. If you're going to go into cloud, you better get used to learning, because cloud is new every day, and you have to stick out, right? So keep on learning. Don't give up on learning, and enjoy it, right? If you have a career that you enjoy, that's going to make it even sweeter.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And to all the participants as well, thanks a lot for spending the last 1 hour with us. We hope you'll be able to apply the learnings from this session as well as what you'll get from our Cloud Architect Masters program to get ahead in your career. So